All right. Hi, everybody. So I thought that I would do a video basically talking about an article that I read. I think it was Ishtar, hi Ishtar, that had posted it on her community feed, and it was regarding Latin women who have had children after 35. Now, of course, we're referring to celebrities. Okay, so in this video, guys, I feel so fucking weird. Oh, and by the way, I'm home alone. This is like a really weird fit. So my husband had to go run some errands, and he actually took our son with him. So I get to curse all over the place and say all types of bad stuff. I'll try not to be too vulgar for the sensitive out there. So I figured I would kind of talk about my experiences, and I'm going to kind of get into different things, like different, I don't know if I'm going to get too deep into like relationship things, but I have my very professional little book over here, and I made some notes to refer to. All right. So I'm going to refer to this and I'm going to tell you guys some stuff. All right. From a lady who has been with the same person for, going on 18 years. Okay? So, yeah. First and foremost, even though my husband and I have been together for a very long time, we haven't been, and I'm going to be very honest in this video, we didn't do things in the order that everybody says to do things in. Okay, we didn't get married first and then have a baby and then and we didn't do all that. All right. So we were together for a good amount of years before I actually got pregnant. What took me so long to get pregnant was because both my husband and I were cigarette smokers. And I know that you people are probably watching that like and saying to yourself how disgusting that is. Yes. Okay. So him and I were cigarette smokers, and we were cigarette smokers for a while. So him and I were cigarette smokers, and we decided to quit. And the very same year that I quit, I want to say, I think I quit in a January. It was like a New Year's resolution. And then within a matter of 3 months, boom, I was pregnant. And it was out of nowhere. And when I would go to the doctor, there was never anything wrong with me. When I went to the GYN, there was never anything. So I was always assuming that it was just me being a smoker. And also, my husband and I, we really didn't want kids. Neither one of us did. And then when I got pregnant, we were both like, oh my God, I want this. I'm talking about my situation, okay? My situation is not everybody else's situation, okay? There's women out there, there's so many stories of women who get left after they get pregnant. They think that they're with a guy that will stay with them and be with them and at least take care of the baby. And we hear over and over again that that's not the case, okay? This is why, when it comes to relationship things and stuff like that, everything about my life is, and I'm not trying to say this like I'm special. No. But it's very different. There's a lot of outliers with me. Like, for example, my parents got divorced when I was very young, and the one who had the sole custody of me was my dad, not my mom. When I was abused as a child, it was when I lived with my mother, and she was also living with other family at the time. And there were other people living in that house, and that's when that happened. Okay? So I kind of wanted to put that out there, right? I have no problems with talking about that stuff like that. So, it is what it is. That's why I could say it and, whatever. So just a lot of things with my life is not like the cookie cutter, especially growing up in the environment that I did. And I think that there's a lot of different factors with that. Okay. So anyway, back to that, back to when I got pregnant. So I got pregnant, and, both of us wanted this baby. And I was excited. I remember at that time I was telling all of my, the people who I was friends with. I told my professors, because I was actually in school at that time. I had told my professors that I was pregnant. And, some of them congratulated me. Most of them didn't really care. And within a few months after being pregnant, I ended up having a miscarriage. And I remember at the time being so heartbroken. Both my husband and I were so like we felt like our hearts were like ripped apart. And even till this day, I don't like to talk about it too much. I don't like to think about it too much because it still hurts. And not everybody can understand that. People that have never had a miscarriage are not going to understand that. And not everybody is going to be sympathetic to that situation. Even at the time when I had to take off from school because I had the miscarriage, I had professors who were not understanding about it. And it was very disappointing, especially when I had older female professors who were very like, okay, well, make sure you have this done by this and this day. And it's like, wow, all right, But yeah, so, not everybody is going to be sympathetic to your situation if you do have a miscarriage, okay? A few months after I had a miscarriage, I ended up getting pregnant again with my daughter, who is now 7 years old, okay? I was pregnant with my daughter in my early 30s. I went back to college late and all of that. It was so weird that everything happened late in life for me, especially because my husband and I, we were together for such a long time and I just never had gotten pregnant. And then all of a sudden I'm like getting pregnant like crazy. And I'm like, wow. It was a blessing because we were in a better situation. However, I will say, that first pregnancy, that was before I was 35, okay? My second pregnancy was after I was 35. Huge difference. So, when I went to give birth to my daughter, okay, the whole pregnancy, my doctor, my GYN, she was fantastic. I love that woman to death, okay? She was a Nigerian woman. She is a fantastic person, and I think, if I can try to, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I want to go visit her or whatever, just because she was really good, okay? And she really took a liking to both my husband and I. What people don't know, and this, I don't know if this is everywhere, but in New York, where we were at the time, because we were still somewhat close to New York City, the hospitals are associated, and I'm not sure if it's still like this, but they're associated with two different networks. I think it's Columbia Presbyterian, and the other one is, I forgot. Okay, I think it starts with an M. For some, it's just not coming to me right now. The hospital that I actually liked, that was actually closer to where I lived, my doctor was not affiliated with that hospital. So I had to go to a hospital that was not that great to give birth to my daughter. And I remember telling my doctor, I was like, oh, there's no way we can do it at this hospital. I would really prefer that. So I hope my camera is not all wonky because I had to just stop the video completely. Okay, let me try to whatever. Oh, whatever. I'm going to try. Hopefully, it's not, this weird thing is not messing with people's eyes too much. Sorry. So the whole point is, she wasn't affiliated with that hospital, so I had to go to the hospital that she was affiliated with that network. And needless to say, I love my doctor. She was fantastic. The staff at this hospital were awful, okay? They were horrible. And I don't even know how else to explain it other than the nurses were nasty with me. Even while I was giving birth, they were really mean with me. The woman that gave me an epidural was not only racist to me, but my doctor also. Okay? And I remember being in excruciating pain. I believe that I was in labor for about 16 hours or so. It took her 6 times to give me an epidural shot. If you don't know what an epidural shot is when they put the epidural in your spine. Okay? That could have paralyzed me. All right? The whole time that she was trying to give me the epidural shot, she was like, oh my God, were you working out during your pregnancy? Oh my God, why is your back so tight? I did work out I didn't do anything crazy though. Okay? But she was basically trying to blame it on my back for the reason as to why she couldn't give me the epidural shot. This bitch. Okay? And she had asked me, I just kind of want to give an example of the racist shit that she said. She was a Jewish lady, and she came out and she's like, where are you from? And I you know how I am. You guys are people who know me. You know how I respond to that shit. And I'm in excruciating pain. I'm like, from New York. Where's your parents from? They're from New York. And she's like, no, I hear an accent. First of all, I have a Brooklyn accent, you stupid bitch, right? So she just wanted to like get it out of me because she can tell that I wasn't a white lady, okay? That's basically what that was about. And if people want to call me a white lady, go ahead and call it. I don't fucking care, okay? But the whole point was that that's what she did. And then, you know, so I told her where my grandparents were from. Oh, that's where that accent is from. I'm like, no, it's not. I have a Brooklyn accent. Okay? Dead, swear to God, this happened. Okay? And I'm here in pain. And that's exactly how she responded. She didn't give a fuck about me being in pain. And then somehow, I don't know how the topic came up, but she started talking about, you know, Africa and Africans. And she's like, yeah, Ghana, isn't that where you're from? And she said that to my doctor. My doctor is like, I'm not. And I'm like, she's Nigerian. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, I'm from Nigeria. And I'm looking at her like, I can't believe that this is happening to me while I'm fucking trying to give birth. True story. True story. All right? Not only did this bitch, I'm going to call her bitch as many times as I want to. Bitch, bitch, bitch. She's a bitch. Not only did she do that, but when it was time for me to, you know, I kept pushing. Throughout the whole pregnancy, my doctor was like, you're going to be able to give natural birth. She's like, she would tell me, she's like, you have the hips for it. You're going to be able to get it. She used to tell me that all the time. And I'm like, okay, whatever the hell that means. Okay. So I'm here thinking I was going to be able to do it. And unfortunately, my daughter, and if you didn't know, my daughter ended up, sometimes when giving birth is disgusting, okay? There's shit, there's piss, everything. My daughter, while she was still inside of me, took a poop, okay? When babies do that, if they swallow it, they can die. So while I'm pushing, screaming for dear life, my doctor comes and she goes and she puts her hand inside to see how basically where my daughter's head is. She pulls her hand out. She's like, the baby pooped. And I remember throwing my head back in the pool because I knew what that meant. Because I read up about all of that prior to giving birth. And she was like, what do you want to do? She's like, do you want to keep pushing? And I'm like, I don't want her to die. I don't want her to die. And at that point, I said, let's just do it. I said, let's just do the C-section. And they ended up performing an emergency C-section, which I ended up feeling every bit of being cut open. Okay? I thought I was going to die. I'm not exaggerating. If I have any dickhead guys, I'm saying dickhead guys because a lot of times it's guys that are like this. It's dumbass women that have never been pregnant that think this way too. Childbirth is closest to the equivalent of dying more than anything else that's out there. Okay? I felt everything. My doctor knew that I felt everything. By the time they gave me the C-section, the epidural, everything wore off. Okay? I felt being, ripped open. I felt my placenta being taken out, and then I felt my daughter being taken out. The one great thing that I would say about my doctor is that that's a procedure that normally takes about a half an hour. My doctor did that shit in and within that 5 minutes, I thought I was gonna die. Now, I remember telling my husband, I'm like, if it's between her or me, I'm like, you better take her, And I was shaking. My whole body was shaking. And they got my daughter out. And that was the thing that I cared about. And I remember kind of looking down and accidentally seeing, my body cut open and seeing the placenta there. And then on top of that, the woman who gave me the epidural being on the side of me, she's like, you did? She's like, no, I couldn't have been that. It had to be the pressure. And my doctor, they're arguing with the lady who gave me the epidural. Yes, she did feel it. It wore off. So I had to hear that interaction back and forth. The bitch that gave me the epidural, her just being like, oh, you did, that's not what happened. No, that's not what happened. My doctor telling her, yes, that is what happened. Not only that, my stay at the hospital, because I had to stay there days after, was I don't wish it on, well, do I wish it on my worst enemy? I'm just kidding. But I don't wish, it was awful, to say the least. The nurses were awful to me. I was having a hard time breastfeeding. And, I did manage to breastfeed for like I would say the first few months with having my daughter. And I was also doing formula at the same time. And I know that people are going to be very judgmental about that. It is what it is. Okay. I was an older person already by that point, and there was a point that I finally ended up drying up. Okay. So no matter how much I tried, and which I did, I was still having a hard time. And at the hospital, the nurses were giving me a hard time because I wasn't producing enough milk. Okay. So that was that stay at that hospital. And versus the second time around, let me go into my notebook just in case I'm like not, I don't want to like miss anything. So the second time around, I had my daughter, and after I had my daughter, I want to say about a year or two after that, I ended up getting pregnant again. And, again, my husband and I were surprised because this I forgot to mention. After I gave birth to my daughter, I was in the hospital. I got very sick. I ended up going to the hospital 2 times after having my daughter. First time around, I got very sick. The second time around, I ended up developing a cyst in my right ovary to the point where my ovary wrapped around the cyst. The size of the cyst was about, they said it was about the size of like a softball. Okay. I didn't know that the cyst had gotten that large because I had went to the hospital. They set me up to go get the cyst removed, and supposedly it grew that large, and they couldn't believe that I wasn't in excruciating pain. And basically they caught the cyst in time before my ovary would have exploded and I would have died. So they removed the ovary. So I have one ovary. Okay. I'm working with one ovary. And, a couple of years after I had my daughter, having one ovary, being an older person, I got pregnant again. Just like that wasn't planned or nothing. And a couple of months after that, I ended up having another miscarriage. And after that, I just figured, because I was just getting nothing but older, I was like, I'm probably not even going to get pregnant again. And I didn't think anything of it. And then COVID came around, and we ended up buying this house, the house that I'm in right now. And when we bought the house, we were happy. When we first moved in, I was trying to do as much fixing up as I could do, painting, everything that I can do. And that it was around November-ish that we moved, early November, we moved out here. And weeks had passed, and I was trying to do as much as I can to get the house situated. And then I noticed, like at the end of November, it was around Thanksgiving. I think it might have even been Thanksgiving Day. I'm the one that normally does Thanksgiving. We usually have Thanksgiving here or at wherever we lived. It was always me that was doing the Thanksgiving for the most part. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I haven't got my period. And I was like, huh. So I waited another week, and I still didn't get my period. And I told my husband, I'm like, babe, I gotta get a pregnancy test. And I took a pregnancy test, and I was pregnant. So when we moved here, I didn't even know I was pregnant. I'm not sure if I said that in the video. I think I might have, but I'm saying it again. That's just in case. So I didn't know I was pregnant until we moved out here. And, I was happy, but I was also scared because I was doing so much, stuff around the house, and I was dealing with paint and all these chemicals and all this stuff trying to fix things, So I'm like, oh no, I was worried. And so the doctor told me not to worry because it was still the early part of the pregnancy, and normally when you're dealing with stuff like that, you should be fine. So then time goes by and months go by, and I get checked or whatever, and I was curious about the gender of my baby, and that because sometimes people don't want to know. And so we're at the I'm here getting scanned, and I asked the girl, and I'm like, what is this? She's like, it's a boy. And I'm like, no. And before that, my parents, my sister, everybody, when I was showing pictures of the baby in the womb, prior to that, they were all telling me the same thing. It's a boy. It's a boy. And inside I felt it was a boy. And my husband was like, no, we're too old. And my husband's like, I'm too old. He's like, I don't think I can, at this age, normally when you're older as a man, you can't have boys. And like so he was like that way of thinking. And when the lady told us that we had a boy, both of us, we just both started crying in happiness. I ended up getting another C-section the second time around because I didn't want to go through the same thing again. And the doctor had told me, he's like, look, if you can try if you want to. He's like, it's really up to you. He's like, but I would suggest to be careful because of your age. Because giving, childbirth at this, you are basically, I'm an older person. Okay. What I will say is if you're going to have children as an older person, you do have to still be careful because physically your body is not as strong as somebody that's in their 20s. However, I know the financial aspect of it, and more than likely you'll be financially better off as an older person versus somebody in their 20s. Common sense, we all know that. Okay? Having kids is not for everybody. All right. I was somebody and that's why when I see these young women online and they'll talk about that they don't want kids and, they're not going to have them and they can't. I know I don't judge because that's how I was. I was the same way. Especially with all the trauma that I went through in my youth. I hated being a young person. I even hated my early 20s. There was things about it that I enjoyed, but I really didn't like it. I feel like I enjoy my life so much more as an older person than I did when I was a younger person. My life was hard in my youth, okay? So when I hear these younger girls talking about how they don't want to, have any children, they don't want to get married, and then you add social media to that and all of that, I get it. They don't want to get married, they don't want to have kids, and then how heinous crimes are out there against women and children, especially minority women, especially black women and children. I get it. Like I'm not gonna be like, oh no, you have to have them. No, you have to do this. You don't have to do shit. I do as somebody that's not a single person. I do see like people that do videos, just different people that have been making videos and kind of talking about married women, and that there's married women that hate single women. There's plenty of us married ladies that do not hate single women. Okay, I'm one of them. I do not hate single women. I do not fear single women. Okay, I do not feel like my marriage is threatened over single women or anybody else. But I can understand why there's women like that, okay? Like, because there are women that are married that have that type of funny style attitude towards single women. I know because in my early 20s, there was a point where I was by myself for a few, for like a couple of years. And I had a friend who was like, she's like, oh, you've been by yourself for so long. And I was in my early 20s, I was in college. I had like a bullshit job. That was the first time I was, in college. And I didn't get to finish, and I ended up finishing when I got older. And she was like, oh, I'm gonna set you up and da-da-da-da-da, and like, oh my God, how could you be single? I was like, I was fine being single. Like, what the hell's wrong with you, And then here's another thing that I kind of I feel like, this is just something that crossed my mind. Because there's women out there that are in relationships and fine, they'll talk about how there's single women that are jealous of them and da-da-da-da, like bullshit like that. And I want to tell this to especially the women that are like in these fucked up abusive relationships. If you have a friend and she's single and you're in like this terrible ass relationship where you're with a dude that's not about shit, and she's telling you, don't be with this guy. And it's not because she's jealous of your relationship. It's because she's worried about your goddamn safety. Okay? So please, the married women need to, cut the bullshit out, because there's some women that are in some really, dysfunctional ass relationships. And I see it online. Like, I can't imagine, because there's times I think like, what if my marriage don't work? What if things don't work? What if stuff don't work? What am I, I honestly don't want to date. I can't. Oh my God. Like, these people are nuts. Guys are nuts. And people are so entitled. Oh God, people are gonna hate. I'm gonna sound like a real old person. What I'm about to say. People are really entitled, and this is both men and women, both genders. It's just like this entitlement. I grew up with men being entitled. Okay. Unlike the stuff that we hear all the time that women say that they want a man to be this height, make this much money, make that. I grew up with the reverse. I grew up around mostly men. Like I said in the beginning of the video, my dad was a single dad. Okay? So he always had guy friends. He had my uncles come over to the house. They used to party. They used to drink. They used to do coke. They used to do all types of shit. All right? And I used to have to hear the men talk with their demands that were through the fucking roof with their demands, okay? That's what I'm used to. And this was seeing things in my real life, hearing men in my real life, all right? So sometimes I kind of feel like maybe that's why I see women on social media kind of being like the opposite now. Like, you know, they got their, you know, their way to like get their education and kind of be independent. And now they're the ones that are like, no, now I want this and I want that. And I just feel like people got all these crazy demands from both sides that just like unbelievably ridiculous fucking demands. All right. You know, there's things that would be nice, you know, to have. Like you might want to, you know, you might have like a certain type that you like or a certain person, you know, whatever, that would be nice. But that doesn't mean to like not be open to other people either, you know. And so some people are so, I don't know, I feel like people are just really delusional. And this is men and some women. But at the same time, like, I am not one of these people that has a hatred for single. I could give a fuck if you're single. Like, do your thing. I could care less. You know, that's your business. It's not mine. And I do feel also that there is, I don't want to get too into it, but I do feel like there is a hatred of women, period. And this is a hatred of women, not just by men, but even by other women. And it's just getting worse. Okay? I've heard of all types of stuff here online, different platforms, where there's times where people are like saying that women are going to become obsolete. I don't even want to get into that, okay? Between different things. And I feel it because people really hate. They really do dislike women. And, you know, being online even within these past few years and the comments that I get and the pushback that I've gotten, and I've had both men and women really, really hate me on here. And just in general, I see how they hate they hate other women, especially other women that are not going to be putting up with their bullshit. Okay. Now, there's one thing to have extremely high demands, and there's another thing to be putting up with other people's bullshit just to be in a relationship, just to have friends, just to be... I'm not that person. It's why my friendship, my circle is extremely small, and it's going to stay extremely small. It's probably just going to get smaller. Because I don't do that shit where it's like I need to be friends with everybody and I need to be cool with everybody. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, if you don't like me, that's great, you know? And if I get the impression, like, if I like somebody as a friend or whatever, but I feel like they don't like me, like, that's all right. It's cool. It's cool. You know, it is what it is. But, like, the fact that I kind of feel like it's almost pushed now that there is women that hate single women. Now it's like, let's have a hatred for married women. like, that's like, oh God, you know, like, I didn't do nothing to nobody. I'm just here minding my fucking business and taking care of my kids. You know, I live a very, do I want to say, I hate to use the fucking word privileged, but to an extent, you know, I'm a stay-at-home mom. Okay, not many people can be stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home wives. All right, but my situation in its entirety is very different. Okay, so I can't expect people to just go out there and be like, you know, go find that. If you can find that, you know, much blessings to you. Kudos to you. It may not be that easy for everybody, you know. But also, you know, there's that saying with women that are like that they could do bad all alone. And some of them can. Like, yeah, you can. Like, why put up, especially if you're like making your own money, you're doing it, like, why have to deal with some guy that's gonna just do nothing but treat you terribly, and then if you have kids, he's gonna leave you. What that's what your standard should be? No. You know? And then, the other thing that gets me is we grow up around so much dysfunction. And I'm kind of gonna just use black and brown people because, that's where I grew up. We grew up around so much dysfunction. And what gets me is that as adults, I don't understand why people don't rationalize and understand that we grew up around so much dysfunction, but we're expecting to be able to attract the right people, the right friends, the right everything. Meanwhile, a lot of us are walking around really fucking unhealed. That doesn't make sense to me. How does that make sense to anybody? So, that's why I feel like there's a lot of delusion when it comes to us. Because it's like we're expecting to get this type of foundation, but what's the foundation that we came from? Our foundations in a lot of cases are fucked. We are not on even playing fields with, I'll just use it as an example, just because it's the biggest community to use as an example. With the white community, most of a lot of the families are intact families. And I'm just even going by where I live. All right, there's a lot of intact families. A lot of the people where we live here are older, though. We're kind of like the younger people around here. Just goes to show how, there's kind of like an older people area that we live in. But it's like intact families, their whole upbringing and everything, their whole foundation started off a completely different way than our foundation started off. But then we're expecting everything to just fall in place like the way the white communities does. And again, I'm just using the white community as an example, and I am not trying to say the white community has everything on lock and that they're doing everything perfect. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just kind of comparing the majorities. All right? But that's kind of what I never understood. And then we don't make anything better by going around telling other people within our community, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. And I'm guilty of that. I am guilty of that. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not. But we're not helping nobody when we do that. It's stupid. Especially if we're walking around unhealed ourselves. But that's the thing. We're so used to being in dysfunction and around dysfunctional people that we consider that normal. And then we're bringing kids into the world. That's why all of this is why I don't blame women for not wanting to have kids. I get it. I totally get it. Now, do I think that there's a whole bunch of other factors in, and do I kind of think that this has all been orchestrated for things to be like this in a way as a population control and different aspects? Like there's so many different things that go through my brain that I don't really talk about on here, especially because I have spoken about things on here and people have taken it, stolen it, manipulated, turned it into something else, and then they try to, write it off as theirs. So I try not to say too much, but it just is what it is. That's the nature of the beast of social media. But all of this is, I'm saying all of this because, we think that even people like myself, who I've been in a relationship, I've been with the same person for almost 20 years. You really don't hear too many people like that. I have a friend she's been with her husband, and she's a little bit younger than me, but they've been together already for over 20 years. Okay? I tend to even attract people that are similar in that way, like women that are similar in that way. And I would say that if you do, as a young woman, if watching this or whatever, even I guess as a man, if you do want to be in a relationship, I would say try to find the best people. If you want advice from people, try to find people who seem to have a sane relationship, that have been in a long-term relationship that looks at least mostly functional. All right? Mostly functional. I'm not telling you to go look out for something perfect, because in all honesty, especially people around my age, a lot of times we really don't have people to look up to, because our parents' generation, the boomer generation, everybody was getting divorced. They had the highest divorce rates, and then Xers would come after that. Okay, but boomers had the highest rates. You can look that up. That's online, very quick and simple. Google search and you'll see that. And I experienced it from, with my own eyes, my own life, seeing it all around me. And I grew up in that environment also. So I know a lot, all of my friends, everybody was divorced when I was young. All of my friends, all their parents were divorced. That's what I meant to say. All of their parents were divorced, either that or it was that, or they were single moms. Everybody was a single mom, whether they were either Latin or Black friends that I had. Everybody grew up in a single mother household. I was the weird one that had like a single father. I wasn't even technically single father because I was still, saw my mother on the weekends and stuff like that. So I still used to go from house to house, so I used to stay with my dad and then I would stay with my mom, and that's kind of how it was. My mother got remarried. She remarried my stepfather, may he rest in peace. He passed away. And, he was fantastic. I had a fantastic stepfather, and even him and my father got along. So again, I don't really have the same dynamic as a lot of other people. That's why even with relationship stuff, I know my foundation, even though there was a lot of broken pieces, there was still some good, or a good amount of good things that I saw growing up, even though there was a lot of dysfunction too. My aunts, my uncles, these are people that have been married for over 50 years. I grew up around that, okay? So I saw what those foundations look like, and not a lot of people, not a lot of people within our community saw that. If anything, a lot of people, like I said, was similar to my household, and just my household, where everybody was getting divorced. I have friends where all of their aunts, uncles, even their own parents, everybody was divorced, okay? So not everybody has... I put all of these things into perspective because you have to. People don't think deep enough about certain things. And I know that I'm kind of getting into so many different things in this video. If you stayed listening to it, then great, thank you. If you clicked off, I get it, because especially with things like TikTok and Instagram, people's attention spans are like a minute and a half and they can't do it anymore. I get it. But this is not, an easy thing to just be like, oh, just get married and this and that. And then why can't, these people be like that? Why can't these men be like this? Why can't these women be like this? Why is everybody like this? Why? A lot of dysfunction. We got a bunch of unhealed people walking around. My camera just shut off by itself. Maybe I'll make this into 2 parts. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll make this into 2 parts.